There is a cactus sitting on a windowsill somewhere right now, in an apartment in Madrid, a flat in London, a house in Buenos Aires, that its owner bought because it was cheap, easy, and supposedly good for absorbing radiation from a computer screen. That cactus is, according to every major school of Feng Shui and at least four independent traditions of household plant lore, actively repelling financial energy from the home. And its owner has no idea. This is not about superstition. It is about a pattern that emerges when you examine which plants appear and which plants are deliberately excluded from the homes, businesses, and temples of cultures that have spent centuries studying the relationship between living spaces and prosperity. When Chinese, Japanese, Indian, Brazilian, and West African traditions all independently agree that certain plants should never be placed in specific locations, the convergence deserves attention, especially when modern environmental psychology is beginning to explain why. These are 5 of the most common household plants that multiple traditions warn against, not because the plants themselves are harmful, but because their placement in the wrong location can create exactly the opposite effect from what their owners intend. Plant 1. Cactus, various species. The thorn problem. The cactus is the single most frequently cited plant in Feng Shui literature as incompatible with financial prosperity in the home. The reason is not arbitrary. In Feng Shui theory, sharp points, called poison arrows or sha qi, generate cutting energy that disrupts the smooth flow of qi through a space. Every spine on a cactus is, energetically speaking, a tiny blade pointing outward, creating a field of aggressive, defensive energy around the plant. This sounds abstract until you consider what environmental psychology has documented about human responses to sharp forms. A 2013 study published in the journal Emotion found that participants exposed to angular, pointed shapes in their environment reported higher levels of anxiety, vigilance, and defensive thinking compared to participants in environments dominated by rounded forms. The researchers describe this as an evolutionary response. Sharp shapes in nature historically signaled danger, thorns, claws, teeth, and the human nervous system still reacts to them with a subtle but measurable stress response. A cactus on a desk or near an entrance is not just a plant. It is a collection of hundreds of sharp points occupying the visual field of anyone who works, eats, or relaxes nearby. The stress response is not dramatic. No one looks at a cactus and feels terror, but it is persistent. A low-level increase in cortisol, a slight narrowing of creative thinking, a marginal bias toward defensive, risk-averse decision-making. Over weeks and months, these micro-effects accumulate into patterns that affect financial behavior in measurable ways. The irony is that cacti are often chosen specifically because they are low maintenance, the perfect plant for someone who does not want to think about plant care. But the energy trade-off, according to every tradition that has studied it, is unfavorable. The plant that demands nothing from its owner may be quietly demanding something from the space itself. This does not mean cacti should be discarded entirely. In Feng Shui, they have a legitimate protective function when placed outside the home, near the front door or on a balcony facing a road or a sharp corner of a neighboring building. In that position, the aggressive energy of the spines serves as a shield, deflecting negative influences before they enter the living space. The problem arises only when the cactus is brought inside and placed in areas associated with wealth, creativity, or rest. In more than 20 years of observing how plants affect the atmosphere of a home, the pattern with cacti has been remarkably consistent. People who remove cacti from their desks and living rooms and replace them with round-leafed alternatives almost always report, unprompted, that the space feels different, softer, more open, more inviting. The change is not dramatic, but it is noticeable, and it is consistent. The replacement is straightforward. For every location where a cactus currently sits, a jade plant offers comparable low-maintenance hardiness with the opposite energetic profile, round leaves, soft edges, and thousands of years of association with financial accumulation. The switch costs less than €3 and takes less than 5 minutes. Plant 2. Dying or neglected. Plants, the silent signal. This entry is not about a specific species, it is about a condition, and it is arguably the most important item on this list. A dead plant in a home is, in every tradition that addresses the topic, an active symbol of stagnation, decay, and financial decline. In Feng Shui, a dying plant represents Sha Qi in its most concentrated form, life energy that has reversed, turned inward, and begun to decompose. In Brazilian folk tradition, a dead plant near the entrance of a business is considered so inauspicious that many shop owners will close temporarily rather than leave a wilting plant visible to customers. In Yoruba tradition, allowing a plant to die through neglect is interpreted as a sign of disrespect toward the life force that sustains the household. The psychological mechanism is straightforward. A dying plant in the visual field serves as a constant, unconscious reminder of failure, neglect, and entropy. Environmental psychology research has shown that visual cues of decay, wilting leaves, brown edges, empty pots with dry soil, activate the same neural pathways associated with loss aversion. The presence of a dying plant in a workspace has been correlated with reduced motivation, lower task persistence, and a measurable increase in procrastination behaviors. A 2017 study from the University of Exeter found that offices with well-maintained plants showed 15% higher productivity than offices without plants. But the same study found that offices with poorly maintained or dying plants performed worse than offices with no plants at all. The dying plant was not neutral, it was actively harmful, more harmful in measurable terms than an empty space. The implications for the home are direct. A yellowing pothos in a dark corner, a succulent that has not been watered in 3 months, a fern with brown fronds that its owner keeps meaning to revive, an orchid whose flowers dropped months ago and whose leaves are slowly yellowing. Each of these is, according to multiple independent traditions and confirmed by modern research, doing more harm to the prosperity of a home than the empty space it occupies. The solution requires honesty more than skill. Every plant in the home should be either thriving or removed. If a plant cannot be revived within 2 weeks of dedicated care, proper light, proper watering, removal of dead foliage, it should be composted with gratitude and replaced with something better suited to the conditions of that specific space. A dark bathroom does not need an orchid that will slowly die. It needs a snake plant that will thrive there for decades. The willingness to remove a dying plant is itself a prosperity practice. It signals a commitment to maintaining standards, to releasing what no longer serves, and to creating space for new growth. These are not just gardening principles, they are financial principles. The person who cannot let go of a dying plant because they feel guilty about the money spent on it is practicing the same psychology that prevents people from selling a losing investment. The sunk cost fallacy applies to houseplants exactly as it applies to stocks. Plant 3, bonsai tree, the stunted growth. The bonsai is a masterpiece of horticultural art. It is also, according to Feng Shui and several other traditions, one of the worst plants to keep in a home that aspires to financial growth. The reasoning is direct. A bonsai is a tree that has been deliberately prevented from reaching its natural size. Its roots are confined. Its branches are pruned and wired into predetermined shapes. Its growth is controlled, restricted, and miniaturized. In Feng Shui symbolism, this represents exactly what a household should avoid: stunted potential, limited expansion, growth that is artificially constrained. This does not mean bonsai is without value. As an art form, it represents patience, discipline, and the mastery of natural forces. In Japanese culture, bonsai is associated with meditation, contemplation, and the acceptance of impermanence. These are admirable qualities, but they are not prosperity qualities. They are qualities of restraint, limitation, and controlled reduction, the opposite of the expansive, flowing, abundant energy that Feng Shui seeks to cultivate in a financial context. The environmental psychology dimension is subtler but present. A bonsai on a desk is a constant visual metaphor for containment. For a person working on creative projects, launching a business, or trying to expand their income, that metaphor operates at a subconscious level, reinforcing the idea that growth should be small, controlled, and carefully limited. The person may not be consciously aware of this influence, but the pattern, in home after home, over decades of observation, is that bonsai in workspaces tends to coincide with conservative, small-scale financial thinking. A 2015 study on workspace design published in the Journal of Environmental Psychology examined how different types of visual stimuli affected risk tolerance and creative output. Participants in rooms with expansive, growing plants demonstrated measurably higher willingness to consider ambitious projects compared to participants in rooms with constrained or miniaturized natural elements. The bonsai was not specifically tested, but the principle it represents, restricted growth, fell squarely into the category of visual stimuli that suppressed expansive thinking. The alternative is simple. Replace the bonsai with a plant that is actively growing, visibly expanding, and reaching upward or outward. A pothos cascading from a shelf. A jade plant thickening its trunk month by month. A rubber plant pushing new leaves toward the ceiling. A monstera unfurling one massive leaf after another. These plants carry the opposite symbolism: unlimited potential, natural expansion, growth that is encouraged rather than constrained. The bonsai itself can be relocated rather than discarded. A garden, a patio, a balcony, or a space dedicated to meditation or contemplation. Any location where the energy of restraint and reflection is appropriate rather than counterproductive. The plant is not the problem, the placement is. Plant 4. Dried flowers and artificial plants. The frozen energy. Dried flowers are dead. This is not a judgment, it is a biological fact. And in Feng Shui, dead organic material in the home represents energy that has stopped moving, qi that has been frozen in place, unable to circulate, unable to nourish, unable to attract. The popularity of dried flower arrangements has grown enormously in recent years, driven by their aesthetic appeal and zero maintenance requirements. Pampas grass, dried eucalyptus, preserved roses, dried lavender bundles. They are beautiful, they are trendy, and according to every major tradition of household energy management, they are actively working against financial flow in the spaces they occupy. The mechanism is both symbolic and practical. Symbolically, dried flowers represent a moment of beauty that is past, captured, preserved, but no longer alive. In a home oriented toward growth and abundance, this symbolism is counterproductive. It is the equivalent of framing a photograph of a meal instead of cooking a new one. The beauty is real, but it belongs to the past. Practically, dried flowers collect dust at a rate significantly higher than living plants. A 2020 study on indoor air quality published in Building and Environment found that dried organic arrangements accumulated particulate matter at 3 to 4 times the rate of living plants in the same space. This dust includes mold spores, bacteria, and allergens that degrade respiratory health over time, particularly in bedrooms, where dried arrangements are increasingly popular as decorative elements. The same study noted that living plants actively reduce airborne particulates through their leaf surfaces, while dried plants increase them. The difference in air quality between a room with living plants and a room with dried flowers is measurable and consistent. Artificial plants present a similar problem from a different angle. They look alive, but are not. In Feng Shui, this deception creates a fundamental energetic confusion in the space, the visual promise of life without the actual qi that a living plant produces. A silk ficus in the corner of a living room may look attractive, but it purifies no air, releases no oxygen, transpires no moisture, and grows not at all. It occupies the space where a living plant could be performing all of these functions. The replacement strategy is practical. A preserved eucalyptus arrangement on a dining table can be replaced with a small potted herb, rosemary, basil, or mint, that is alive, fragrant, and usable in cooking. A silk plant in a dark corner can be replaced with a snake plant, which thrives in exactly those conditions. A dried pampas grass arrangement can be replaced with a living ornamental grass in a pot. The investment is small. The energetic and practical difference is substantial. Plant 5, Euphorbia tirucali, pencil cactus, the toxic prosperity blocker. The pencil cactus is increasingly popular as a modern architectural houseplant. Its thin, cylindrical branches create striking geometric patterns that photograph well and complement minimalist interior design. It is also one of the most toxic common houseplants in existence, producing a milky latex sap that causes severe skin burns, eye damage, and respiratory irritation upon contact. In Feng Shui and Brazilian folk tradition, toxic plants inside the home are considered incompatible with prosperity energy. The reasoning is both symbolic and physiological. Symbolically, a plant that harms upon contact represents hidden danger in the domestic space, a source of injury disguised as beauty. This contradicts the fundamental Feng Shui principle that every element in a home should contribute to the safety and well-being of its inhabitants. Physiologically, the volatile compounds released by Euphorbia tirucali, even without direct contact, include trace amounts of irritants that can contribute to headaches and respiratory sensitivity in enclosed spaces over prolonged exposure. The issue extends beyond the pencil cactus to other popular toxic houseplants, certain Dieffenbachia varieties, oleander, and some philodendron species that produce calcium oxalate crystals capable of causing oral and throat irritation. The presence of a plant that requires warning labels and careful handling introduces a subtle but persistent anxiety into the domestic environment. Every time a child reaches toward it, every time a pet brushes past it, every time someone prunes it without gloves, the plant generates a moment of stress and vigilance. These moments accumulate into a background tension that is incompatible with the relaxed, open, trusting energy that prosperity traditions universally associate with financial abundance. A 2018 survey published in the journal Hort Science found that households with young children or pets that kept toxic houseplants reported measurably higher anxiety about their indoor environment compared to households with exclusively non-toxic plants. The anxiety was not constant, but it was present, a low-level awareness that something in the home could cause harm. That awareness, sustained over months and years, shapes the emotional character of a space in ways that are difficult to quantify but impossible to ignore. A home oriented toward abundance should be a space where every element invites openness, relaxation, and trust. A plant that requires its inhabitants to be vigilant, cautious, and defensive is working against that objective. Regardless of how striking it looks in a photograph, the replacement options are abundant. For the same architectural, vertical aesthetic, a snake plant provides dramatic visual impact with zero toxicity and exceptional air purification. For the branching, sculptural quality that makes the pencil cactus attractive, a money tree, Pachira aquatica, delivers a similar visual statement with the added benefit of being one of the most traditional prosperity plants in both Chinese and Brazilian culture. The trade is not a sacrifice, it is an upgrade. 5 plants, 5 patterns, 5 ways that well-intentioned decorating choices can quietly work against the financial energy of a home. The common thread is not that these plants are bad. Cacti are extraordinary survivors. Bonsai is a legitimate art form. Dried flowers are beautiful. The pencil cactus is architecturally stunning. The problem is not the plant, it is the placement. The introduction of defensive, stagnant, constrained, dead, or toxic energy into spaces that should be flowing, growing, open, alive, and safe. The correction is rarely dramatic. It does not require spending hundreds of euros on new plants or redesigning an entire home. In most cases, it means moving 1 or 2 plants to a different location, replacing one dried arrangement with a living alternative, and committing to either reviving or removing any plant that is no longer thriving. Every major tradition of household prosperity agrees on one principle: the plants in a home should be alive, growing, and healthy. Everything else is detail. That single principle, applied consistently, does more for the energy of a space than any specific plant placement or feng shui formula. Those who have noticed changes after moving or replacing plants in their homes are invited to share their experiences. Observations from real homes, accumulated over real time, often reveal patterns that theory alone cannot predict. A like helps this content reach others who may be living with these patterns without realizing it. Subscribing ensures the next video arrives when it is published.